Hello. Welcome. I know a lot of you are here because you're trying to fall asleep. Maybe it's late where you are. Maybe you've been scrolling for hours, looking for something to quiet your mind. I'm glad you're here. Before we begin, I want you to know there are no ads in this video. This channel isn't monetized. I just make these because some stories need to be told. If you'd like to support what I do, a subscription would mean everything. And if you're comfortable, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing you're out there, listening in the dark. Now, let's begin. I've never told anyone this before. Not really. I've mentioned parts of it, sure, but never the whole thing. Never in a way that made sense, because when you say it out loud, it sounds insane. It sounds like something you dreamed. But I didn't dream it. I know I didn't. It started when I moved into my first apartment alone. I was 23. The place was small, affordable, on the 4th floor of an old building downtown. The landlord was this older man who didn't ask many questions. Didn't run a credit check, just handed me the keys and told me rent was due on the 1st. I liked that. I liked the freedom. I liked the idea of being alone, finally, after years of roommates and dorm rooms and sleeping on couches. The apartment had hardwood floors that creaked, tall windows that didn't quite close all the way, and a kitchen so narrow you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out. It smelled like old wood and dust, and something faintly sweet I could never place. But it was mine. The first few weeks were normal. I worked during the day, came home tired, ate something quick, watched TV until I fell asleep. I didn't know my neighbors. I didn't see anyone in the hallways. The building was quiet, almost too quiet, but I didn't mind. I liked the silence. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, coming from the apartment above me. I lay there in the dark, listening. The ceiling creaked with each step, back and forth, like someone pacing. I checked my phone. It was 3:47 a.m. I figured it was just a neighbor who couldn't sleep. I rolled over and tried to ignore it. But the footsteps didn't stop. They kept going. Same rhythm, same path, over and over. Eventually I fell back asleep. The next night, it happened again. Same time, 3:47 a.m. I woke to the sound of footsteps directly above my bed. Pacing. Slow and heavy. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, watching the faint shadows shift in the streetlight coming through my window. I told myself it was nothing. Old building, thin walls. People keep weird hours, but it kept happening every single night. Always at 3:47, always the same pacing. And after a while I started to notice something else. The footsteps always stopped directly above my bed. Not above the kitchen, not above the living room, right above where I was sleeping. I started staying up, waiting for it. I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and right at 3:47, the footsteps would start. I could track them. They'd begin near the far wall, move slowly across the room, and stop right above me. Then after a few seconds of silence, they'd start again, pacing, back and forth. I went upstairs one morning. I needed to know who lived there. I needed to see if they even knew they were doing it. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. I went back downstairs and asked the landlord about it. He looked at me like I'd said something strange. "There's nobody up there," he said. I laughed. "What do you mean? Someone's living there. I hear them every night." He shook his head. "Unit 5B has been empty for 8 months. Lease ended last winter. Nobody's moved in since." I felt my stomach tighten. "That's impossible. I hear footsteps every night, right above my bed." He stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. "Old building, pipes, settling. You'd be surprised what sounds like footsteps." But I knew what I heard. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't the building settling. It was footsteps. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat on my couch with the lights on, waiting. At 3:47, the footsteps started. Slow, heavy, pacing. I grabbed my phone and called the landlord. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding. And then I heard something else. A door closing. Upstairs. I went to my front door and opened it. Stepped into the hallway. It was empty. The lights flickered. I looked up at the stairs leading to the 5th floor. I don't know why I went up. I should have stayed in my apartment. I should have locked the door and ignored it. But I didn't. I climbed the stairs slowly, my footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. When I reached the 5th floor, the hallway was dark. The light at the far end was burned out. I could barely see. I walked to Unit 5B. The door was closed. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. I tried the handle. It turned. The door opened. The apartment was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. Just bare floors and walls. Moonlight came through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. I stepped inside. The air was cold, stale, like no one had been there in months. I walked through the apartment slowly, checking each room. The kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom, nothing. But then I noticed something. In the bedroom, right above where my bed would be 1 floor below, there were marks on the floor, deep grooves in the wood, like something heavy had been dragged back and forth, over and over, wearing down the floor in 2 long, parallel lines. I stood there, staring at those marks, and I felt something I can't describe, a weight in my chest, a coldness in my spine. I left the apartment and went back downstairs. I locked my door. I turned on every light. I didn't sleep that night. The footsteps never came back after that. Not once, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in bed, I think about those marks on the floor. I think about how perfectly they lined up, how they stopped right above where I slept, and I wonder what was pacing up there. What was waiting? I moved out 2 months later. I used to work the night shift at a gas station just outside of town. It was one of those places that's open 24 hours, sits right off the highway, gets a lot of truckers and travelers passing through. The pay wasn't great, but it was easy, quiet. Most nights, I'd go hours without seeing anyone. I worked alone. Midnight to 8 a.m. The manager would leave around 11, lock up the office, and I'd have the place to myself. I didn't mind. I liked the solitude. I'd bring a book, listen to music, scroll through my phone. Time passed. The store itself was small. 2 aisles of snacks and drinks, a coffee station that nobody ever used, a back room for storage, and a single bathroom with a lock that didn't work. The lights inside were too bright, fluorescent and buzzing, and outside, the parking lot was lit by 2 tall lamps that flickered whenever the wind picked up. There was a gas pump island, but it was self-service. I didn't have to go outside unless someone needed help, which almost never happened. It was a Tuesday night, I think. Maybe a Wednesday. I don't remember exactly. But it was slow. I hadn't seen a customer in over an hour. I was sitting behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, when I heard the bell above the door chime. I looked up. A man walked in. He was tall, maybe in his 40s, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. His hair was wet, like he'd been standing in the rain, but it wasn't raining. He didn't look at me. He just walked straight to the back of the store, toward the drinks. I watched him for a second, then went back to my phone. I heard him moving around, opening a fridge door, closing it. Normal. A few minutes later, he came to the counter. He had a bottle of water in his hand. He set it down without saying anything. I scanned it. $2, I said. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me. Not in an aggressive way, not threatening, just staring. I shifted uncomfortably. $2, I said again. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, and set it on the counter. I gave him his change. He took it, picked up the water, and walked toward the door. But he didn't leave. He stopped right in front of the door, standing under the fluorescent lights, and turned around. He looked at me again. Same blank expression, same stare. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was wrong, too wide, too still, like he was holding it. He pushed the door open and walked out. I stood there, heart pounding, watching through the glass as he walked across the parking lot, past the gas pumps, and disappeared into the darkness beyond the lights. I locked the door. I know you're not supposed to lock the door during business hours, but I didn't care. I locked it and went back behind the counter. 20 minutes later, the bell chimed again. I looked up. It was him, same jacket, same wet hair. He walked in, went straight to the back, grabbed a bottle of water, and came to the counter. I felt my throat tighten. "You were just here," I said. He didn't respond. He set the water down. I stared at him. "You already bought water." He didn't blink. He reached into his pocket, pulled out another crumpled $5, and set it on the counter. I didn't move. I didn't scan the water. I just stood there looking at him. He tilted his head slightly, like he was confused. $2, he said quietly. My hands were shaking. I scanned the water. I gave him his change. He took it, picked up the bottle, and walked to the door. He stopped again, turned around, smiled. Then he left. I grabbed my phone and called my manager. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I went to the window and looked outside. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no people, just the flickering lights and the hum of the refrigerators inside. I sat back down behind the counter and tried to calm down. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he forgot he already bought water. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe... The bell chimed. I looked up. He was back. Same routine. Same walk to the back. Same bottle of water. Same expressionless face. He set the water on the counter. I didn't say anything this time. I just scanned it. Gave him his change. Watched him walk to the door. He stopped, turned, smiled, left. This happened 4 more times. Each time he came in, bought a bottle of water, and left. Each time he stopped at the door, turned around, and smiled. And each time I felt like something was wrong, like something was breaking. After the 6th time, I locked the door again and turned off the outside lights. I crouched behind the counter and called 911. The operator asked me what my emergency was. I told her there was a man coming into the gas station over and over, and I didn't know what he wanted, and I was scared. She asked if he had threatened me. I said no. She asked if he had a weapon. I said I didn't know. She said she'd send someone to check it out, but it might take a while. We were outside city limits. The nearest patrol car was 20 minutes away. I hung up and waited. I didn't hear the bell. I didn't see Neb come in. But when I looked up, he was standing at the counter. I gasped and stumbled backward. He tilted his head. "Doors locked," he said. I couldn't speak. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled 5, and set it on the counter. "I'd like to buy some water," he said. I shook my head. No, you need to leave." He didn't move. "Please," he said. "I'm thirsty." I grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I called the police. "They're coming." He smiled, that same wrong smile. "That's okay," he said. "I'll wait." He walked to the door and stood there, facing me, smiling. I don't know how long we stayed like that. It felt like hours. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. When the police finally arrived, they found me behind the counter, crying. The door was still locked. The man was gone. They searched the parking lot, checked the cameras. There was nothing. No footage of him, no car, no trace. They asked me what he looked like. I told them. They said they'd keep an eye out. But I knew they wouldn't find him. I quit the next day. I never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I think about the way he smiled, the way he stood at the door, the way he said he'd wait. And I wonder if he's still waiting. When I was 15, my best friend was a girl named Sarah. We'd known each other since elementary school, and we were inseparable. We did everything together. Sleepovers, school projects, weekend trips to the mall. We told each other everything, or at least I thought we did. Sarah lived 2 streets over from me, in a small house with her mom and her older brother. Her dad had left when she was little, and her mom worked long hours, so Sarah spent a lot of time alone. I didn't mind. It meant we could hang out whenever we wanted. Her house always felt off. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't dirty or anything like that. It was just cold, even in the summer, and it was quiet in a way that made you want to whisper. Sarah's room was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hallway. It was small, with a single window that looked out onto the backyard. She had posters on the walls, a cluttered desk, a bed pushed into the corner. Normal stuff. But there was something about that room that always made me uneasy. One Friday night, I slept over at her house. We stayed up late watching movies, eating junk food, talking about boys and school and all the things 15-year-old girls talk about. Around midnight, we finally turned off the TV and got ready for bed. I slept on the floor in a sleeping bag next to her bed. She turned off the lights and the room went dark, except for the faint glow of streetlights coming through the window. We talked for a while longer, our voices low in the darkness. Eventually, Sarah's breathing slowed, and I knew she'd fallen asleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to fall asleep myself. But I couldn't. I felt restless, uncomfortable, like something was watching me. I rolled onto my side and looked toward the window. There was someone standing there. I froze. It was a figure, tall, silhouetted against the window, just standing there, not moving. My heart started pounding. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My throat was closed. I couldn't breathe. I squeezed my eyes shut and told myself I was seeing things, that it was just a shadow, just my imagination. When I opened my eyes again, the figure was gone. I lay there for a long time, my heart racing, staring at the empty window. Eventually, I convinced myself it was nothing. A trick of the light. A coat hanging on the back of the door. Something. I finally fell asleep. The next morning, I didn't mention it to Sarah. I didn't want to freak her out, and honestly, I wasn't even sure I'd really seen anything. But the next time I slept over, it happened again. Same thing. I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was someone standing at the window. Same tall figure, same stillness. This time I forced myself to sit up. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It just stood there. I reached over and shook Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah," I whispered, "wake up." She groaned and rolled over. "What?" "There's someone at the window." She opened her eyes and looked toward the window. "What are you talking about?" I pointed. "Right there. Do you see it?" She stared for a second, then shook her head. "There's nothing there. Go back to sleep." But I could still see it, clear as day. Sarah turned over and went back to sleep. I lay there, staring at the figure, until eventually it faded, like it was never there. After that, I started seeing it every time I stayed over, always in the same spot, always at night, always when Sarah was asleep. I stopped mentioning it. I didn't want her to think I was crazy. But one night I couldn't take it anymore. I was lying there, staring at the figure, and I whispered, "What do you want?" The figure didn't move, but I heard something, a voice, faint, like it was coming from far away. It said, "Help her." I sat up, my whole body shaking. "Help who?" The figure tilted its head. "Help her." I looked at Sarah, sleeping in her bed. "Help her with what?" The figure didn't answer. It just faded into the darkness. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day I finally asked Sarah if anything weird had been happening, if she'd been feeling okay, if something was wrong. She looked at me like I was being dramatic. "I'm fine," she said. "Why?" I didn't know how to explain it, so I didn't. But over the next few weeks, Sarah started changing. She got quieter, more distant. She stopped returning my calls. She stopped sitting with me at lunch. When I asked her what was wrong, she'd just say she was tired. Her mom called my mom one night. Sarah had been found in the bathroom, unconscious. She'd swallowed a bottle of pills. They rushed her to the hospital. She survived, but barely. I visited her a few days later. She was pale, her eyes hollow. She didn't say much, just stared at the wall. I wanted to tell her about the figure, about the voice, about the warning, but I didn't. I didn't think she'd believe me. Sarah got better, eventually. She went to therapy. She moved to a different school. We lost touch. But I still think about that figure in her room. I think about the voice. Help her. And I wonder if I could have done something sooner. If I could have stopped it. I'll never know. My grandfather died when I was 12. I wasn't close to him. He lived 3 states away, and we only saw him a few times a year, usually during holidays. He was quiet, reserved, the kind of man who didn't say much but always seemed to be watching. After he died, my mom inherited his house. She didn't want to sell it right away, so she asked me and my dad to go down and clear it out, pack up his things, sort through what we wanted to keep and what we could donate. It was summer. I remember the heat, the long drive down empty highways. The house was in a rural area, surrounded by fields and trees, miles away from the nearest town. When we arrived, the house felt abandoned. It smelled like dust and old wood, and something sour I couldn't place. The windows were dirty, covered in grime. The furniture was old. sagging, covered in sheets. My dad started in the living room. I took the upstairs. There were 3 bedrooms, my grandfather's, a guest room, and a small room at the end of the hall that was locked. I tried the handle. It didn't budge. I knocked. No answer. I went back downstairs and asked my dad about it. "There's a locked room upstairs," I said. He looked up from the box he was packing. "What?" "A locked room. Do you have a key?" He frowned. "I don't think so. Your grandfather never mentioned a locked room." We searched the house for a key, checked drawers, cabinets, closets. Nothing. Eventually, my dad grabbed a screwdriver and went upstairs. He forced the lock. The door swung open. The room was small, empty, except for a single wooden chair in the center. The walls were bare. The floor was covered in a thin layer of dust. But there was something else. On the walls, written in pencil, were names, hundreds of them, covering every inch of the walls. Some were neat, written in careful handwriting. Others were scrawled, barely legible. I stepped inside, staring at the names. I didn't recognize any of them. My dad stood in the doorway, his face pale. "What the hell is this?" I shook my head. I didn't know. We stood there for a long time, just looking. Then my dad said, "Let's get out of here." We left the room and closed the door. We didn't talk about it. We finished packing the rest of the house in silence. Before we left, I went back upstairs. I don't know why. I just needed to see it again. I opened the door and stepped inside. The chair was still there. The names were still there. But now, on the wall directly in front of the chair, there was one more name. Mine, written in the same pencil, in handwriting I didn't recognize. I ran out of the room. I didn't tell my dad. I didn't tell anyone. We left that day. My mom sold the house a few months later. I never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that room, about all those names, about the chair facing the wall, and I wonder what my grandfather was doing in there. I wonder why my name was on the wall. I used to have a recurring dream. It started when I was a kid, maybe 7 or 8, and it continued for years. It was always the same, exactly the same. In the dream, I'm standing in a hallway, long, narrow, with white walls and a tile floor. There are doors on both sides, all of them closed. The hallway is bright, but I can't tell where the light is coming from. There are no windows, no lamps, just light. I'm walking down the hallway, and I don't know why. I don't know where I'm going. I just know I have to keep moving. As I walk, I hear something behind me. Footsteps, slow, heavy, following me. I don't turn around. I don't want to see what's following me. I just walk faster. The footsteps get louder, closer. I start to run. The hallway stretches out in front of me, longer and longer, and no matter how fast I run, I never reach the end. The footsteps are right behind me now. I can hear breathing, low and raspy. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. Then I wake up. I had this dream at least once a week for 10 years. Same hallway, same footsteps, same terror. I told my parents about it when I was younger. They said it was just a nightmare, that it would go away eventually. But it didn't. When I was 17, I went to a doctor, a sleep specialist. I told him about the dream. He asked me questions. Did I have stress? Anxiety? Was I eating before bed? I said no. I just wanted the dream to stop. He prescribed me medication, something to help me sleep deeper. He said the dream might fade if I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night. I took the medication. The dream stopped. For about a month, I slept peacefully. No hallway, no footsteps, nothing. Then one night, I had a different dream. I was standing in the same hallway, but this time I wasn't running. I was standing still, and the footsteps weren't behind me. They were in front of me. I looked up, and at the end of the hallway there was a door. It was open, and standing in the doorway was a figure, tall, shadowy, faceless. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I tried to turn around, but I couldn't. I was frozen. The figure started walking toward me, slow, deliberate. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. It got closer, closer, and then it stopped, right in front of me. It leaned down, its face inches from mine. I still couldn't see its features, just darkness. And then it whispered, "You're not dreaming." I woke up. I stopped taking the medication after that. I didn't care if the dream came back. I didn't care about the hallway or the footsteps, because that voice, that whisper, it didn't sound like a dream. It sounded real. And sometimes, when I'm falling asleep, I hear it again. "You're not dreaming." I work from home now. I'm a freelance writer, so I spend most of my time alone in my apartment, typing away at my laptop. It's quiet, peaceful. I like it. About 6 months ago, I moved into a new place. It's a small studio, one room with a bathroom and a kitchenette. It's in an older building, but it's cheap, and it's mine. When I first moved in, I noticed something strange. The apartment has a closet near the front door. It's small, just big enough to hang a few coats and store some shoes. But the door doesn't stay closed. No matter how many times I shut it, it always swings open. At first, I thought the door was just uneven, old building, warped wood. I didn't think much of it. But then I started noticing other things. Sometimes I'd come home, and the closet door would be wide open, even though I knew I'd closed it before I left. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and the closet door would be open, even though I'd closed it before bed. I tried putting a chair in front of it, a box, anything to keep it closed. It didn't matter. The door would still open. I told myself it was the air pressure, the heating system, something logical. But then one night I was sitting at my desk, working, and I heard a sound from the closet, a soft thud, like something had fallen. I got up and walked over. The closet door was open. I looked inside. Nothing had fallen. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. But there was something else, a smell, faint, metallic, like old pennies. I stepped back and closed the door. A few minutes later I heard it again. Another thud. I opened the door. Still nothing. This went on for weeks. The door would open. I'd hear sounds. The smell would come and go. I tried ignoring it. I tried rationalizing it. But it kept happening. Then one night I decided to leave the closet door open. I thought maybe if I just let it stay open, it would stop. I went to bed with the closet door wide open. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of the door closing. I sat up, my heart pounding. The closet door was shut. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then I heard something from inside the closet. Breathing, slow, steady, like someone was standing in there, waiting. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I got out of bed and walked slowly to the closet. I reached for the handle. I opened the door. The closet was empty, but the smell was stronger now, metallic, sharp. And on the wall, at the back of the closet, there was something written, in pencil. Small letters. "I'm still here." I moved out the next week. I didn't tell the landlord why. I didn't tell anyone. But sometimes, Late at night, when I'm in my new apartment, I think about that closet, about the door that shouldn't stay closed, about the breathing, about those words on the wall, and I wonder who wrote them. I wonder if they're still there. I still don't go into my childhood bedroom when I visit my parents. It's not because of what happened there. Not exactly. It's because of what I realized happened there, years later, when I was 24 and unpacking a box of old things I'd kept in their attic. I grew up in a regular house, 3 bedrooms, quiet street, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. My room was at the end of the hall, past my parents' room and the bathroom. It had pale yellow walls and a window that looked out over the backyard. I loved that room. I felt safe there. But when I was around 8 or 9, I started waking up in the middle of the night. Not because of a nightmare. Not because I heard something. I would just wake up. And I'd be sitting up in bed, staring at the door. The door would be open. I always closed it before I went to sleep. Always. I was the kind of kid who needed it shut, needed the room to feel contained. But I'd wake up, and it would be open. Not all the way, just a few inches, enough that I could see the dark hallway beyond. I'd get up, close it again, and go back to sleep. This happened a lot, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I mentioned it to my mom once, and she said I probably opened it in my sleep. I accepted that. Kids do weird things when they're sleeping. Right. But then I started noticing something else. When I woke up and saw the door open, I'd feel like I'd been awake for a while. Not just a few seconds. Like I'd been sitting there staring for minutes. Maybe longer. My neck would be stiff. My eyes would be dry, like I hadn't blinked. And I'd have this strange feeling, like I'd been waiting for something. I didn't know what. One night, I woke up the same way, sitting up, door open. But this time, I didn't get up right away. I just sat there looking at the hallway. It was so dark, the kind of dark where you can't see shapes, just depth, like the hallway went on forever. And then I saw it, not clearly. Just a shift, a place where the darkness was denser, shaped like a person, maybe, standing just outside my door. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my throat was closed up, tight and dry. I just stared. And then it was gone. I don't know if it moved, or if my eyes adjusted, or if it was never there at all. But the feeling stayed. That feeling of being watched. After that, I started closing the door and putting a chair in front of it. My parents asked why, and I told them I was scared of the dark. They got me a nightlight. It didn't help. The door still opened. The chair would be moved carefully to the side, like someone had picked it up and set it down again, quiet as anything. I stopped saying anything. I just accepted it. And then one morning when I was 10, I woke up and my door was closed. The chair was still in front of it. And I felt different. Lighter, somehow, like something had left. It never happened again. I didn't think about it for years. But when I was 24, I was going through that box from the attic. Old school projects, drawings, a diary I kept for a few months in 5th grade. I flipped through the diary, smiling at my bad handwriting, my misspelled words. And then I found an entry I didn't remember writing. It was dated during that time, the time when I'd wake up and the door would be open. It said, I woke up again. The door was open. I got up and walked into the hallway. I stood there for a long time. I don't know why. Then I went back to bed. I stared at that entry for a long time, because I didn't remember writing it. and I didn't remember walking into the hallway. I flipped back through the other pages. There were more entries like that, 6 or 7 of them, all saying basically the same thing. I woke up and walked into the hallway. I stood outside Mom and Dad's door. I stood there until I got tired. I felt cold. I called my mom. I asked her as casually as I could if she remembered anything strange from when I was a kid. She laughed and said I was a weird kid, sure, but nothing too strange. Then she paused. She said, "Actually, there was one thing. You used to sleepwalk, just for a few months around age 8 or 9. I'd wake up, and you'd be standing in the hallway, just staring at our door. I'd walk you back to bed, and you'd never remember in the morning." My stomach dropped. Did I ever go anywhere else?" I asked. "No," she said. "Just the hallway. You'd stand there sometimes for 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'd notice and take you back." I thanked her and hung up. I sat there for a while, holding that diary, because I was remembering something now, not clearly, just a feeling. The feeling of standing in the dark, of waiting, of watching my parents' door and wanting it to open, and not knowing why. I don't visit that house much anymore, and when I do, I don't go into my old room, because I keep thinking about those nights, about what I was doing in that hallway, about what I was waiting for, and I keep thinking about the way my mom said it. I'd notice and take you back. Not every time, just sometimes. I used to work at a call center, 3rd shift, midnight to 8 in the morning. It was a terrible job, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed too loud and the carpet smelled like old coffee and dust. We took calls for a credit card company, helping people with billing issues, lost cards, that sort of thing. Most of the calls were routine, boring even, but there was one call I got, about 2 years into working there, that I still think about. It was around 3 in the morning. The shift was dragging. I'd had maybe 6 calls in 4 hours, and I was half asleep at my desk, scrolling through my phone between calls, when the system beeped and a new call came through. I answered the same way I always did. "Thank you for calling. This is Derek. How can I help you?" There was silence on the other end. Not dead air, though. I could hear breathing, soft, even. "Hello?" I said. "Hi," a man's voice said. "Sorry I'm here." "No problem," I said. "What can I help you with tonight?" "I need to report a charge," he said. His voice was flat, calm, the kind of calm that sounds forced. "Sure thing," I said. I pulled up the account screen. "Can I get your card number?" He gave it to me. I typed it in. The account pulled up. Standard stuff. Name, address, recent transactions. "Okay, Mr. Peterson," I said, reading the name on the account. "What charge are you calling about?" "There's one from 2 days ago," he said. "At a gas station. I didn't make it." I scrolled through the transactions. Found one from a gas station in Indiana. $47. "Got it," I said. "I can definitely help you dispute that. Just to confirm, you're saying you didn't authorize this charge?" "No," he said. "I didn't." "Okay. And do you still have your card? Or is it missing?" There was a pause. "I have it," he said. "Great. So we'll mark this as fraud and issue you a new card. You should receive it in 5 to 7 business days." "Okay," he said. I started typing up the dispute. Standard procedure. But then he spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said. "Do you ever get calls from people who don't remember things?" I stopped typing. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Like people who see charges they don't remember making. Not because someone stole their card, but because they don't remember doing it themselves. I didn't know what to say to that. I mean, sometimes people forget small purchases, I said carefully. It happens. Yeah, he said, but what if it's not small? What if it's a lot of things? I glanced at his account again, scrolled through the recent transactions: gas station in Indiana, restaurant in Ohio, hotel in Kentucky, all within the last week. I looked at his address on file. It was in Oregon. "Mr. Peterson," I said slowly, "are you saying you don't remember making any of these charges?" Another pause. "I don't know," he said. "I think I made them. I must have, right? Do you remember being in Indiana or Ohio?" "No," he said. His voice was quieter now. "I don't. But I've been losing time lately. I'll be at home and then I'll blink and it's 3 hours later. Or I'll be in my car and I don't remember getting in it. I thought maybe I was just stressed. But then I saw these charges." I felt a chill run down my back. "Mr. Peterson," I said, "have you seen a doctor about this?" "I don't know if it's a medical thing," he said. "It feels different. It feels like I'm doing things and then forgetting. But I don't know why I'd go to Indiana. I don't know anyone there." I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the kind of thing they trained us for. "I can dispute all of these charges," I said. "If you don't remember making them, we can—" "No," he said, cutting me off. "Don't. I think I did make them. I just need to figure out why." "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure." We finished the call. I canceled the dispute on the gas station charge and told him to call back if he needed anything else. He thanked me and hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at the screen. Then I did something I wasn't supposed to do. I pulled up his account again and looked at his transaction history. Not just the last week, the last 6 months. And I saw a pattern. Every few weeks there would be a cluster of charges, all in different states: gas stations, motels, diners, always far from his home address, and always in places that seemed random. No clear route, no clear destination. And then nothing for a while. And then it would start again. I printed out the transaction history. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to. I never got another call from him. But about a month later, I was scrolling through the news during my shift, and I saw a story. A man in Oregon had been reported missing. His car was found abandoned in a motel parking lot in Nevada. No signs of foul play, no explanation. I looked at the name. It was him. They never found him. I still have that printout. I keep it in a drawer at home. I don't know why. I just think about him sometimes, about where he was going, about what he was doing in all those places, and whether he ever figured out why. My best friend in college was named Olivia. We met during freshman orientation and became close almost immediately. She was funny, smart, a little reckless in the way that 18-year-olds are when they first taste freedom. We spent almost every day together. Late-night study sessions, weekend road trips, long conversations about nothing and everything. She had this habit of taking pictures. Not selfies, not the usual stuff people post online. She liked candid shots. She'd pull out her camera at random moments and snap a photo of whatever caught her eye. A tree, a street sign, someone walking past. She said she liked capturing things that would be forgotten otherwise. I thought it was sweet. Junior year, we rented an apartment together off campus. It was small, kinda crappy, but it was ours. Olivia decorated her room with all her photos. She'd print them out and pin them to the walls, overlapping, covering almost every inch of space. It looked chaotic, but she said it made her feel grounded. One night in October, I came home late from the library. Olivia was supposed to be out with some people from her photography class, but when I walked in, her bedroom door was open and the light was on. I poked my head in. "Hey," I said, "you're back early." She was sitting on her bed, staring at the wall of photos. "Yeah," she said. She didn't look at me. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Do you ever look at something and feel like it's wrong, but you can't figure out why?" "I mean, sure," I said. "What's wrong?" She pointed at the wall. "One of these photos," she said. "I don't remember taking it." I walked into the room and looked at the wall. There were hundreds of photos, maybe more. "Which one?" I asked. She got up and pointed to a picture near the top. It was a photo of a street at night, empty, streetlights glowing orange. Shadows stretched long across the pavement. "This one," she said. I looked at it. It seemed normal to me. "Maybe you just forgot," I said. "You take a lot of pictures." "No," she said. "I remember all of them. I remember where I was, what I was thinking. But this one, I don't recognize this street. I don't know when I took this." I studied the photos more closely. It did look a little off. The angle was strange, low to the ground, like the camera had been set down rather than held, and the street itself looked unfamiliar, not like anywhere near campus. "Maybe someone else took it," I said, "and you printed it by mistake." She shook her head. "It was on my camera," she said, "in the middle of a bunch of other pictures I took last week." I didn't know what to say. "It's probably nothing," I said. "You've been stressed. Maybe you just went for a walk and don't remember." She nodded slowly, but she didn't look convinced. Over the next few weeks, it happened again. She'd find a photo she didn't remember taking, always the same kind of thing. Empty streets, dark rooms, strange angles. She started taking the photos down. She said they made her uncomfortable. I asked her once if she'd been sleepwalking or something. She said no. She was a light sleeper. She'd wake up if she moved around. But I started noticing things. She'd come home at odd hours and not remember where she'd been. She'd find receipts in her pockets for places she didn't recognize. Once, she found dirt on her shoes and had no idea where it came from. She went to a doctor. They ran tests. Everything came back normal. I suggested therapy. She went a few times, but she said it didn't help. The therapist thought she was stressed, maybe dissociating, but I started to wonder if something else was going on. One night, I woke up around 2 in the morning. I'd heard something. A door closing, maybe. I got up and walked into the hallway. Olivia's bedroom door was open. Her room was empty. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I checked the living room. The front door was unlocked. I felt a jolt of panic. I grabbed my phone and called her. She answered after 3 rings. "Hello?" Her voice was groggy, confused. "Where are you?" I asked. "What do you mean?" she said. "I'm in bed." "No," I said. "You're not. I'm looking at your room right now. You're not here." There was a long silence. "That's not funny," she said. "I'm not joking," I said. "Where are you?" Another silence. Then I heard her moving. I heard a door creak open. I'm outside," she said. Her voice was shaking now. "I'm in the parking lot." "What are you doing out there?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I don't know." I met her outside. She was standing by her car, barefoot, wearing the same clothes she'd gone to bed in. She looked pale, scared. "I don't remember coming out here," she said. "I went to sleep, and then you called, and I was just here." She was holding her camera. We went back inside. She checked the camera. There were new photos, dozens of them, all taken that night while she was asleep. Pictures of our apartment, the hallway, the living room, my bedroom door, pictures of me, asleep in my bed. She was crying when she showed me. "I don't remember taking these," she said. "I don't remember any of it." We didn't know what to do. She stopped sleeping. She'd stay up all night, drinking coffee, trying to keep herself awake. But it didn't matter. She'd lose time anyway. She'd blink, and hours would pass. I started locking my bedroom door at night. Eventually, she moved out. She said she didn't feel safe. She didn't say where she was going. I haven't talked to her in 3 years. But sometimes, late at night, I get a text from her number. It's always the same. Just a photo, an empty street, a dark room, a strange angle, and I never know if she's the one sending them. When I was 16, my family took a road trip to visit my grandmother in Montana. It was summer, and we decided to drive instead of fly. My parents thought it would be fun. Quality time. I mostly just slept in the back seat and listened to music. The trip took 2 days. We stopped at a motel halfway, somewhere in South Dakota. It was one of those little roadside places, the kind with a flickering neon sign and a parking lot full of trucks. I don't remember the name. We checked in around 9 at night. My parents got one room and I got the one next door. My dad made a joke about me being grown up enough to have my own space. I rolled my eyes and took the key. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Small, outdated, vaguely musty. The bedspread had a floral pattern that might have been popular 30 years ago. There was a TV bolted to the dresser and a painting of a mountain on the wall. I dropped my bag, plugged in my phone, and lay down on the bed. I was tired, but not sleepy. I turned on the TV and flipped through the channels. Static, infomercials, a rerun of some cop show. I settled on the cop show and watched without really paying attention. At some point, I heard voices. They were coming from the room next door. Not my parents' room. The other side. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Thin walls, other guests, whatever. But the voices were strange. They were low, almost whispers, but insistent. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent. I turned the TV down a little and listened. The voices stopped. I waited. Nothing. I turned the TV back up. A few minutes later, I heard something else. A thump. It came from the wall behind the bed. Not loud, but heavy, like something had fallen. Then another thump, and another. I sat up. The thumping continued, rhythmic, like someone was hitting the wall over and over, not hard, but consistent. I got up and pressed my ear to the wall. The thumping stopped. I heard the voices again, clearer now. One voice said, "Stop." Another voice said, "I can't." Then nothing. I stepped back from the wall. I thought about calling my parents, but I felt stupid. It was probably just someone moving furniture or something. I was being paranoid. I got back into bed and tried to ignore it. But then I heard the door. Not my door. The door to the room next door. I heard it open and then close. I got up and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I unlocked my door and stepped outside. The door to the room next to mine, room 14, was closed. The lights were off inside. I could see through the gap at the bottom of the door. I stood there for a moment, feeling silly. Then I heard footsteps. They were coming from inside the room, slow, deliberate. They walked from one end of the room to the other, then stopped, then started again. I went back to my room and locked the door. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept hearing things, voices, footsteps, the occasional thump. I put in headphones and turned my music up loud, but I could still feel it, the sense that something was happening on the other side of that wall. In the morning, I asked my parents if they'd heard at anything strange. They said no. We checked out around 8. I glanced at room 14 as we walked past. The door was open. A housekeeper was inside, changing the sheets. I looked in as we passed. The room was identical to mine. Same layout, same ugly bedspread, same painting on the wall. But there was something wrong. The wallpaper behind the bed was torn. Not a little tear. A long, jagged strip, like something had been clawed at it. I stopped walking. My mom turned around. "Come on," she said. "We need to get going." I didn't say anything. I just followed her to the car. We drove for a few hours before I brought it up. "Did you see that room?" I asked. "Room 14? My dad glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "What about it?" "The wallpaper was torn," I said. He shrugged. "Old motel," he said. "Probably falling apart." I didn't push it. But later when we stopped for lunch, I looked up the motel on my phone. I found a few reviews. Most of them were what you'd expect. Fine for a night. Nothing special. Clean enough. But there was one review, posted a few months before our stay, that caught my eye. It said, "Stayed in room 14. Heard voices all night. Couldn't sleep. Front desk said the room next door was empty. I don't think it was." I read it 3 times. Then I scrolled down. There was another review from a year before. "Room 14. Something is wrong with that room. Don't stay there." And another from 2 years before. "I don't know what's in room 14, but I heard someone crying all night. When I checked out, I asked the front desk about it. They said no one had stayed in that room in weeks." I felt cold. I clicked on the motel's website. I wanted to see if there was any information about the place, its history, anything. The website was bare bones, just a few photos and a phone number. But at the bottom, in small text, there was a single line. "Rooms available except room 14. I closed my phone. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. But I think about it sometimes. About what was in that room. About what I heard. About the fact that, according to the front desk, no one was staying there. And I wonder who tore that wallpaper and whether they ever got out. I don't have a lot of memories from when I was very young. Most of what I remember from early childhood is just flashes. A birthday party, a trip to the zoo, the way my grandmother's house smelled. But there's one memory that stands out. I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5. We lived in a small house on the edge of town, and behind the house was a field. Just tall grass and wildflowers stretching out to a line of trees in the distance. I used to play in that field. My mom would let me go out there in the afternoons, as long as I stayed where she could see me from the kitchen window. I'd run around, pick flowers, chase bugs, normal kid stuff. But I remember one afternoon I was out there, and I saw someone, a woman. She was standing at the far edge of the field, right at the tree line. She was too far away for me to see her face clearly, but I could tell she was looking at me. She was wearing a long dress. It might have been white or pale yellow. I'm not sure. The details are fuzzy. I waved at her. She didn't wave back. I stood there for a moment, watching her. She didn't move. She just stood there, completely still, looking in my direction. I felt strange, not scared exactly, just uncertain. I turned around and ran back to the house. I told my mom I'd seen a woman in the field. She looked out the window. "Where?" she asked. I pointed. "By the trees." She squinted. "I don't see anyone, sweetie," she said. I looked again. The woman was gone. My mom smiled and ruffled my hair. "Maybe it was a deer," she said. I didn't think it was a deer, but I didn't argue. Over the next few weeks I saw her again, always in the same spot, always standing still, always watching. I stopped telling my mom. I don't know why. I just felt like I wasn't supposed to. One day I decided to walk closer. I don't know what I was thinking. I was a little kid. I didn't understand danger the way you do when you're older. I walked across the field, through the tall grass, toward the tree line. The woman didn't move. I got closer, and then I stopped, because I realized something. She wasn't standing on the ground. She was standing just above it. Not floating, exactly. Just not quite touching the grass. I felt a rush of fear. I turned around and ran. I didn't look back. When I got to the house, I looked out the kitchen window. She was still there. But now she was closer. Not at the tree line anymore. Halfway across the field. I didn't go outside for the rest of the day. The next morning, I looked out the window. She was gone. I never saw her again. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my mom about the house we used to live in. I asked if she remembered anything strange about it. She thought for a moment. "Not really," she said, "although there was something. Before we moved in, the landlord mentioned that a woman had died on the property a long time ago. She'd lived in a house that used to be where the field was. The house burned down. I think she was killed in the fire." I felt a chill. "Did he say anything else?" I asked. "Not really," my mom said. "Why?" I shrugged, just curious. But I kept thinking about it, about the woman in the field, about the way she watched me, about the way she got closer. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I'd kept walking, if I'd reached her. I wonder if she wanted something from me, or if she was trying to warn me about something. I don't know. I just know that sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I see her in my mind, standing in that field, just above the ground, watching, waiting. My uncle died when I was 12. He'd been sick for a while, cancer. It wasn't a surprise, but it was still hard. He was my dad's younger brother, and they'd been close. After the funeral, my dad didn't talk much. He'd just sit in his chair in the living room, staring at the TV, without really watching it. A few weeks after the funeral, my dad started acting strange. He'd go out to the garage late at night. I'd hear the door open, hear his footsteps on the concrete floor. He'd be out there for hours. One night, I asked my mom what he was doing. She sighed. "He's going through your uncle's things," she said. "Your uncle left him some boxes. I think he's just processing." I didn't think much of it. But then I started hearing him talk. At first I thought he was on the phone. But when I listened more closely, I realized he wasn't. He was just talking, out loud, to no one. I asked my mom about it. She said he was probably just thinking out loud, grieving. But it didn't sound like thinking out loud. It sounded like a conversation. One night, I couldn't sleep. It was late, maybe 1 or 2 in the morning, and I heard the garage door open. I got up, and walked downstairs. The door to the garage was cracked open. I could see a sliver of light. I pushed the door open a little more and looked inside. My dad was sitting on an old stool surrounded by boxes. He was holding something in his hands. I couldn't see what it was. And he was talking. "I know," he said. "I know. I should have." He paused like he was listening. "I didn't think it would matter," he said. Another pause. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice cracked. I felt a lump in my throat. I pushed the door open a little more. My dad turned around. "What are you doing up?" he asked. His voice was sharp. "I heard you," I said. "Are you okay?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Go back to bed," he said. "Dad." "Go." I went back upstairs, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day I asked him who he'd been talking to. He said, "No one." "You were talking," I said. "I heard you." He set down his coffee and looked at me. "I was talking to myself," he said. "It didn't sound like yourself," I said. He didn't say anything. A few days later I went into the garage while he was at work. I wanted to see what was in those boxes. Most of it was normal stuff. Old books, clothes, tools. But at the bottom of one box, I found something strange. A tape recorder. It was old, the kind with little cassette tapes. There was a tape inside. I pressed play. At first there was just static. Then I heard a voice. It was my uncle's voice. "Hey," he said. "If you're listening to this, it means I'm gone. I wanted to leave you something. Not just things. But I don't know. Thoughts, I guess." There was a pause. "I've been thinking a lot about regret," he said. "About the things I didn't say, the things I didn't do. I know I wasn't always the best brother. I know I let you down sometimes." Another pause. "I just want you to know that I'm sorry, and I hope you can forgive me." The tape ended. I sat there, staring at the recorder. That night I told my dad I'd found the tape. He didn't get mad. He just nodded. "I've been listening to it," he said, "every night." "Why?" I asked. He looked at me. "Because it feels like he's still here," he said, "like I can still talk to him." I didn't know what to say. He started spending less time in the garage after that. The boxes got packed away. The tape recorder disappeared. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear him talking, and I don't think he's talking to himself. I used to work night shifts at a call center. Nothing glamorous. Just customer service for a big insurance company, the kind where people call in angry about claims or premiums or whatever. The job itself wasn't bad. Mostly it was boring, but the building was strange. It was this old converted warehouse on the edge of town, way out past the industrial park, where nothing else was open after dark. During the day, the place probably looked normal. Fluorescent lights, gray carpet, rows of cubicles. But at night, when it was just me and maybe 4 other people scattered across 2 floors, it felt different. It felt too big, too empty. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 in the morning. I'd get there around 10:45, park in the massive lot that was always completely empty except for a handful of cars, and walk across this long stretch of asphalt to the side entrance. The main doors were locked too at night. You had to use your badge to get in through the side, and the door was heavy, metal, the kind that clanged shut behind you, with a sound that echoed. Inside, the building was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, uncomfortable quiet, the kind where you become hyper-aware of your own footsteps, your own breathing. The lights were on, always on, but they were dimmed, like someone had decided we didn't need full brightness at night. It made everything look washed out. Gray walls, gray floors, the cubicles stretching out in rows that seemed to go on forever. I worked on the second floor, near the back. My cubicle was in a corner, which I actually liked because it meant I could see anyone coming before they got close. Not that anyone usually did. The other night shift workers were spread out. There was a guy named Marco who worked on the first floor, and two women, Sandra and Lee, who were somewhere on the second floor but far enough away that I never saw them unless I went to the break room. The calls were sporadic. Sometimes I'd get 3 in an hour. Sometimes I'd go 2 hours without a single one. In between, I'd browse the internet, read, listen to music on low volume, anything to pass the time. The company didn't care as long as you answered the phone when it rang. But there was this thing that started happening about 2 months into the job. I'd hear footsteps. At first, I thought it was one of the other workers. The building was old, and sound traveled weird. Maybe someone was walking to the break room, or the bathroom, or just stretching their legs. But the footsteps were always in the same place. They came from the far end of the second floor, past the rows of empty cubicles, in the section where nobody worked. I'd hear them late, usually around 2 or 3 in the morning, a slow, steady rhythm, heel-toe, 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 not rushed, not hesitant, just walking. The first few times I ignored it, told myself it was Sandra or Lee. But one night I got curious. The footsteps started, and I stood up, peeked over the top of my cubicle, and looked down the rows toward the far end of the floor. Nothing. The lights were on. I could see all the way down. Empty cubicles, empty aisles, no one there. But I could still hear the footsteps, clear as anything. Heel-toe, heel-toe, heel-toe. I sat back down, and they stopped. After that it happened more often. Always the same. Always that same slow, deliberate pace. I started timing it. The footsteps would last about 30 seconds, then stop. Sometimes they'd start again a few minutes later. Sometimes not. I mentioned it to Marco one night in the break room. He was microwaving something that smelled like burnt popcorn, and I said, "Hey, do you ever hear footsteps on the second floor?" He looked at me. "I'm on the first floor." "I know, but do you ever come upstairs?" "No." "Why would I?" "I don't know. I just keep hearing someone walking around up there." He shrugged. "Probably Sandra or Lee." "Yeah, probably." But I didn't believe it. And I don't think he did either, because he wouldn't look at me when he said it. I decided to ask Sandra. I saw her one night coming out of the bathroom, and I said, "Do you ever walk around the second floor, like past the cubicles toward the back?" She frowned. "No, my desk is up front." "Why?" "Just wondering." She stared at me for a second, then said, "You hear them too?" My stomach dropped. "Hear what?" "The footsteps." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I hear them." She looked relieved, like she'd been holding something in and finally had permission to let it out. "I thought I was going crazy. I've been hearing them for weeks. Always at night. Always the same spot." "Have you seen anyone?" "No, never. I've looked. There's no one there." We stood there for a moment, not saying anything. Then she said, "I asked Lee about it. She said she hears them too." "Did you tell anyone? Like a manager?" Sandra shook her head. "What am I supposed to say? Hey, I think there's a ghost walking around the second floor. They'd think I'm insane." She was right. So we didn't say anything. We just kept working, kept hearing the footsteps. But then things got worse. One night, I was on a call. It was around 2:30 a.m., and I was talking to this woman about her claim. Normal stuff. She was annoyed but not yelling, and I was going through the usual script, putting her on hold to check her account, all of that. While she was on hold, I heard the footsteps start. I glanced toward the far end of the floor, but I kept working. I'd gotten used to it by then. It was just background noise, creepy background noise, but still. Then I heard something else, a voice. It was faint, distant, like someone was talking in the other side of the building. I couldn't make out the words, but it was definitely a voice. Low, male, I think. I took the woman off hold and finished the call, hung up, sat there listening. The footsteps had stopped. The voice was gone. I stood up and walked toward the far end of the floor. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of being scared. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that there was a rational explanation. I walked past the rows of cubicles, my footsteps too loud in the silence. The lights flickered once, just for a second, and my heart jumped into my throat. But they came back on. I reached the far end. There was a hallway back there that led to some storage rooms and an old conference room we never used. The door to the conference room was closed. I stood in front of it, staring at the handle. I should have turned around. I should have gone back to my desk. But I didn't. I opened the door. The room was dark. I fumbled for the light switch, flipped it on. Empty. Just a long table, some chairs, a whiteboard on the wall. Nothing out of place. But the air felt wrong, cold, still. I backed out of the room, closed the door, and walked quickly back to my desk. The rest of the night I didn't hear anything. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. But when I left at 7 a.m. and walked out to my car, I noticed something. There were footprints in the dust on the floor near the side entrance. Not mine. I'd come in hours ago, and these were fresh. Just a few prints, leading from the door to the stairwell. I looked at them for a long time. Then I got in my car and drove home. I didn't quit, but I should have. I needed the money. So I kept going back, kept hearing the footsteps, kept pretending everything was normal. Sandra stopped showing up about a week later. I heard she requested a transfer to day shift. I don't blame her. I still work there. The footsteps still happen. I don't look anymore. I just put my headphones on and turn the volume up until I can't hear anything but music. But sometimes, late at night, I'll get this feeling, like someone standing right behind me. Right there, just outside my cubicle. And I'll sit very still, staring at my screen, telling myself not to turn around. Because I don't want to know if someone's really there. When I was 12, my family moved into a new house. It wasn't new, actually. It was old, built in the 50s, maybe earlier. But it was new to us. The house was in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knew everyone and kids rode bikes in the street until the streetlights came on. It had 3 bedrooms, a basement, a backyard with a big oak tree. My parents loved it. My little brother loved it. I didn't. From the first day, something felt off. I can't explain it. It wasn't anything obvious. The house wasn't creepy looking. It didn't have strange noises or flickering lights or anything like that. It just felt occupied, like we were moving into a space that already belonged to someone else, and they hadn't left yet. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hallway. It was a decent size, with a window that looked out over the backyard. I put up posters, arranged my books, set up my desk, tried to make it feel like mine. But it never did. At night, I'd lie in bed and feel like someone was watching me. Not from the window, not from the closet, from inside the room, like someone was standing in the corner, just out of sight, staring. I told my mom. She said it was normal to feel weird in a new place. "Give it time," she said. "You'll get used to it." But I didn't. One night, about a month after we moved in, I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know what woke me. I just opened my eyes, and I was awake. The room was dark, but not completely. There was a little bit of light coming in from the street lamp outside, just enough to see the shapes of furniture. My dresser, my desk, the closet door slightly open. I looked toward the corner of the room. There was someone standing there. I froze. My whole body went rigid and I couldn't breathe. It was a person. I could see the outline, tall, still, just standing there facing me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. I wanted to move, to run, but my body wouldn't respond. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. Me staring, the figure standing. Then it moved, not toward me. It turned, slowly, and walked toward the closet. And then it was gone. I lay there shaking until the sun came up. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't know how to explain it. And part of me thought, maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was the shadows playing tricks. But it happened again. A few nights later I woke up, and the figure was back. Same corner, same stillness, same slow turn toward the closet before disappearing. I started sleeping with the lights on. My parents asked why, and I said I was scared of the dark. They didn't push it. But even with the lights on, I could feel it. That presence, that sense of being watched. I started spending more time outside in the backyard, just to avoid being in my room. There was a tire swing hanging from the oak tree, and I'd sit on it for hours, swinging slowly, staring at the back of the house. One afternoon I noticed something. The window to my bedroom was on the second floor, right above the back porch, and from where I was sitting, I could see inside. There was someone in my room. I stood up, heart pounding, and squinted. It was a woman. She was standing by the window looking out. She had long hair, and she was wearing something light-colored, like a nightgown. I blinked, and she was gone. I ran inside, up the stairs, and burst into my room, empty. I checked the closet, under the bed, nothing. That night I told my brother. He was only 8, but he didn't laugh at me. He just listened, then said, "I see things too." "What kind of things?" "A lady, in the hallway. She walks to your room and then she disappears." My blood went cold. "When do you see her?" "At night, when I get up to go to the bathroom." We sat there, not saying anything. The next day, I went to the library and looked up the history of our house. It took some digging, but I found an old newspaper article from 1974. A woman had died in the house. Her name was Margaret. She'd lived there alone. One night she fell down the stairs and broke her neck. No one found her for 3 days. The article didn't say which room was hers, but I knew. I knew it was mine. I begged my parents to let me switch rooms. I said I didn't like the view or the size or something. They finally agreed, and I moved into the smaller bedroom across the hall. The presence stopped. I didn't see the figure anymore. I didn't feel watched. But my brother did. He moved into my old room, and within a week, he was asking to switch back. He wouldn't say why, just said he didn't like it. My parents thought we were being dramatic. They said we were feeding off each other's fears, but they let him move. We turned my old room into a guest room. No one ever stayed in it for more than one night. People would complain about the same things, feeling watched, waking up in the middle of the night, seeing someone in the corner. We stopped offering it to guests. When I was 17, we moved out. My parents said it was for work, but I think they felt it too. That heaviness, that sense that the house didn't want us there. We never talked about it. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that figure in the corner, the way it stood so still, the way it turned and walked into the closet like it was going somewhere I couldn't follow. And I wonder if Margaret is still there, still standing in that corner, still walking to the closet night after night, looking for something she lost a long time ago. I had a best friend in college named Ethan. We met freshman year, and we were inseparable. Same sense of humor, same taste in music, same habit of staying up until 4 in the morning, talking about nothing and everything. He was one of those people who just got me, you know. The kind of friend you think you'll have forever. We graduated, got jobs in the same city, shared an apartment for a couple of years. Life was good. And then Ethan disappeared. Not literally. Not at first. He just started pulling away, canceled plans, stopped answering texts. When I did see him, he seemed distant, distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. I asked him if everything was okay, and he said, yeah, just busy with work. I believed him. I figured he was stressed, maybe going through something he didn't want to talk about yet. Then he moved out. He said he needed his own space, said it wasn't personal. I helped him pack, and he seemed normal that day. A little quiet, maybe, but not upset. We said we'd hang out soon. He said he'd text me. He didn't. I tried reaching out a few times, sent messages, called, left voicemails, nothing. After a while, I stopped trying. I figured if he wanted space, I'd give it to him. Maybe he'd come around eventually. Months passed. I got on with my life, made new friends, started dating someone. Ethan became a memory, a good memory, but still just a memory. And then one night, I saw him. I was walking home from a bar, a little tipsy, taking a shortcut through this quiet neighborhood I didn't usually go through. It was late, probably past midnight, and there he was, standing under a streetlight, just standing there staring at the ground. I stopped. Ethan? He didn't look up. I walked closer. Ethan, hey, it's me. Still nothing. I reached out, put a hand on his shoulder. He looked up, and his face was blank, empty, like he didn't recognize me. Ethan, are you okay? He blinked, and then slowly he smiled. But it wasn't his smile. It was wrong, too wide, too still. I'm fine, he said. His voice sounded strange, flat, like he was reading from a script. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you. I've been here. Here. What do you mean? He didn't answer, just kept smiling. I felt a chill run through me. Something was very, very wrong. Do you want to grab coffee or something? Catch up? No. Okay, well, it's good to see you. You too. I backed away, slowly, and he just stood there, watching me. That smile still on his face. I turned and walked away, faster than I should have, my heart pounding. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was the alcohol, that I'd imagined it, or misread the situation, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I looked Ethan up online. His social media was gone, all of it. Facebook, Instagram, everything, just gone. I called his old number, disconnected. I went to his apartment. A different name was on the buzzer. I asked around, mutual friends, co-workers. No one had heard from him. It was like he'd vanished. But I'd seen him. I know I did. I started walking through that neighborhood at night, looking for him. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd see him again. Maybe I thought I could help. I never did. But I started noticing things. Other people standing under streetlights, just standing there, staring at nothing, always alone, always still. At first I thought they were homeless, or high, but they didn't look homeless. They looked normal. Regular clothes, clean, just standing there. One night I walked past one of them, a woman, maybe in her 30s. She was standing under a streetlight, hands at her sides, staring at the ground. I stopped. "Are you okay?" She looked up. Same blank expression, same empty eyes. And then she smiled, that same too wide smile. "I'm fine," she said. I backed away, and she just kept smiling. I stopped going to that neighborhood, but I still see them sometimes, in other places, other streets, always at night, always under streetlights, just standing there. I don't know what it means. I don't know what happened to Ethan, or where he went, or why he looked at me like that. But I think about him a lot. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm walking home alone, I'll pass under a streetlight, and I'll stop, just for a second, and I'll wonder if someday someone will walk past me and see me standing there, staring at the ground, smiling. My grandmother died when I was 16. She'd been sick for a while, so it wasn't a surprise, but it still hurt. She was one of those grandmothers who baked cookies and told stories, and always had a tissue in her pocket, the kind you see in movies and think can't be real. But she was. After the funeral, my mom asked me if I wanted anything from her house. Grandma's house was going to be sold, and we were cleaning it out, sorting through decades of belongings. I walked through the rooms, touching things, trying to hold on to the feeling of her. In her bedroom, I found a photo album. It was old, the kind with a fake leather cover and those sticky pages with the plastic film over them. I opened it, flipping through pictures of people I didn't recognize. Grandma when she was young, her parents, friends, a whole life I'd never known. And then I saw a picture of me. It was near the back of the album, tucked between two other photos. I was standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, wearing clothes I'd never owned. I looked about 10 or 11, but I didn't remember this. I stared at the photo, trying to place it, trying to remember when it was taken, where I was, who I was with. Nothing. I took the album home. That night I went through it again, slowly, looking at every picture. Most of them made sense. Family vacations, holidays, birthday parties. But that one photo, I couldn't place it. I asked my mom, showed her the picture. She frowned. "I don't remember this. When was it taken?" "I don't know. Are you sure that's you?" I looked at the photo again. It was definitely me. Same face, same hair, same birthmark on my left arm, visible in the picture. It's me. My mom stared at it for a long time, then shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe your grandmother took it on a day out, just the two of you. But I don't remember. You were young. Maybe you forgot." I didn't believe that. I had a good memory. I remembered most things from when I was 10. School, friends, family trips. But this? Nothing. I kept the album. Over the next few weeks, I kept looking at that photo. I'd take it out, study it, try to force the memory to come back. And then I started having dreams. In the dreams, I was in that house, from the photo. It was small, old, with peeling wallpaper and creaky floors. I'd walk through the rooms and everything felt familiar, like I'd been there before. But I couldn't remember when. In the dreams, I wasn't alone. There was someone else in the house. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them, following me, watching me. I'd wake up with my heart racing, the details already fading. One night I decided to do some digging. I scanned the photo and ran it through a reverse image search, hoping to find some clue about where it was taken. Nothing. I posted it on a local community forum, asking if anyone recognized the house. Someone responded, a woman in her 50s. She said the house looked familiar, said it used to belong to a family on Maple Street, but it had been torn down years ago. I asked her if she remembered anything else. She said the family had a daughter who went missing in the 90s. They never found her. I felt sick. I asked my mom if she knew anything about a missing girl on Maple Street. She said no, said she'd never heard of it. I didn't believe her. I went to the library and looked through old newspapers. It took hours, but I found it. A girl named Sarah, 10 years old, went missing from her home on Maple Street in 1998. She was never found. And in the newspaper there was a photo of her house, the same house from my photo. I showed my mom. She went pale. I don't understand, she said. Neither do I. I kept digging. I found out that Sarah's case had gone cold. No suspects, no leads, just a little girl who vanished one afternoon and never came back. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why was I in that photo? Why was I at that house? And why couldn't I remember? I started asking my mom more questions about my childhood, about places we'd been, things we'd done. She got defensive, said I was obsessing, said I needed to let it go, but I couldn't. One night, I confronted her, told her I needed the truth. She broke down, started crying. Said there were things she'd never told me, things she'd tried to forget. She said that when I was 10, I went missing for 3 days. I stared at her. What? You were gone. We looked everywhere. We called the police. And then 3 days later, you just came back. You were standing on the front porch like nothing had happened. You didn't remember where you'd been. You didn't remember anything. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were so scared. You had nightmares for months. The doctors said it was trauma, that your brain was blocking it out to protect you. We thought it was better not to push it, better to let you forget. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Where was I? We don't know. You wouldn't talk about it. And after a while, you seemed fine, like it never happened, so we just moved on. I looked at the photo, at the house on Maple Street. I was there, I said. Wasn't I? My mom didn't answer. I never found out what happened during those 3 days. My mom doesn't know. I don't remember. And Sarah was never found. But sometimes, late at night, I'll have that dream again. Walking through the house with the peeling wallpaper, feeling someone behind me, and I'll wake up, and for just a second, I'll remember. A small, dark room, a little girl, crying, a door that wouldn't open, and then it's gone. I work as a freelance editor. Mostly I do copy editing for small publishers, indie authors, that kind of thing. It's flexible, pays okay, and I can do it from home, which I like. Most of my clients find me through my website or through referrals. I get an email, we discuss the project, they send me the manuscript, I edit it, send it back. Simple. About 6 months ago, I got an email from someone I didn't know. The subject line was just, editing job. But I didn't remember this. I stared at the photo, trying to place it, trying to remember when it was taken, where I was, who I was with. Nothing. I took the album home. That night I went through it again, slowly, looking at every picture. Most of them made sense. Family vacations, holidays, birthday parties. But that one photo, I couldn't place it. I asked my mom, showed her the picture. She frowned. I don't remember this. When was it taken? I don't know. Are you sure that's you? I looked at the photo again. It was definitely me. Same face, same hair, same birthmark on my left arm, visible in the picture. It's me. My mom stared at it for a long time, then shook her head. I don't know, maybe your grandmother took it on a day out, just the two of you. But I don't remember. You were young, maybe you forgot. I didn't believe that. I had a good memory. I remembered most things from when I was 10. School, friends, family trips. But this? Nothing. I kept the album. Over the next few weeks, I kept looking at that photo. I'd take it out, study it, try to force the memory to come back, and then I started having dreams. In the dreams, I was in that house from the photo. It was small, old, with peeling wallpaper and creaky floors. I'd walk through the rooms, and everything felt familiar, like I'd been there before, but I couldn't remember when. In the dreams, I wasn't alone. There was someone else in the house. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them, following me, watching me. I'd wake up with my heart racing, the details already fading. One night, I decided to do some digging. I scanned the photo and ran it through a reverse image search, hoping to find some clue about where it was taken. The email was short. It said they had a manuscript that needed editing, about 80,000 words. They'd pay my full rate, plus a rush fee, if I could finish it in 2 weeks. They asked for my rate and availability. I replied, gave them my rate, said I could do it. They responded within an hour, agreed to the terms, said they'd send the manuscript that night. No name, no publisher, no details about the book. Just, I'll send it tonight. That should have been a red flag, but I needed the money. The manuscript arrived around midnight. It was a Word document, no title page, no author name, just the text. I opened it. The first line was, I don't remember when it started. The manuscript was written in first person. It read like a memoir, but there were no names, no places, just a person describing their life. And their life was disturbing. Not in a violent way, not in a graphic way, just off. The narrator described waking up every day in the same room, going through the same routine, eating the same breakfast, walking the same route. But they couldn't remember how long they'd been doing it. They couldn't remember where they were before. They couldn't remember their name. They described trying to leave, opening the front door, stepping outside, and finding themselves back in the room, like no time had passed. They described talking to people who didn't respond, who looked at them like they weren't there. They described searching for answers, for memories, for anything that felt real, and finding nothing. The manuscript went on like that for 80,000 words. The same routine, the same confusion, the same slow, creepy realization that something was very, very wrong. But it never explained what. It just ended mid-sentence. I don't think I'm supposed to. That was it. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling deeply unsettled. I emailed the client, said I'd finished the initial read-through, and asked if there was more to the manuscript. Asked if the ending was intentional. They replied, "That's everything. Please edit as usual." So I did. I edited the manuscript, fixed grammar, tightened sentences, made notes in the margins. The whole time, I felt strange, like I was reading something I wasn't supposed to, like the manuscript was watching me. I know that sounds insane, but that's how it felt. When I finished, I sent it back. The client replied, "Thank you." That was it. No follow-up, no feedback. I got paid, and I moved on. But I couldn't stop thinking about the manuscript. I started noticing things, my routine. The way I woke up at the same time every day, made the same breakfast, sat at the same desk, the way I walked the same route when I went for walks, saw the same people, the way my days started blending together, one into the next, until I couldn't remember what I'd done yesterday or the day before. I told myself I was just stressed, that I'd been working too much, that I needed a break, but the feeling didn't go away. One night I tried to leave. I got in my car, drove to the edge of town, and kept going. And then I was back home. I don't remember driving back. I don't remember turning around. I just blinked, and I was sitting in my driveway, like no time had passed. I went inside, and everything was the same. The same dishes in the sink, the same show on TV, the same feeling that something was wrong. I tried to call someone, a friend, my sister, anyone. No one answered. I went outside, walked to my neighbor's house, knocked on the door. No answer. I looked through the window. The lights were on. I could see someone moving inside. I knocked again, harder. The person inside looked at me, looked right at me, and then turned away, like I wasn't there. I went back inside. I sat at my computer and opened my email. There was a new message from the same client. The subject line was, "New project." I opened it. It said, "I have another manuscript. Same terms. Let me know if you're available." I stared at the screen. I wanted to say no. I wanted to delete the email, shut down my computer, and never think about it again. But I didn't. I replied, "I'm available." The manuscript arrived that night. I opened it. The first line was, "I don't remember when it started." When I was in high school, there was this guy named Daniel. He wasn't in any of my classes, but I saw him around. He was quiet, kept to himself, the kind of person you'd see in the hallway or the cafeteria and not think twice about, until the day he disappeared. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had a math test that day, and I was stressed about it. I was sitting in the library during lunch, cramming, and I overheard some girls talking. "Did you hear about Daniel? What about him? He's missing, didn't come to school today. His parents don't know where he is." I didn't think much of it. People skipped school all the time. But the next day, he still wasn't there. Or the day after that. By the end of the week, the police were involved. There were search parties, posters, news coverage. Daniel had vanished. No note, no sign of a struggle, no trace. People at school were freaked out. There were assemblies, grief counselors, rumors flying around. Some people said he ran away. Some said he was depressed, that he'd hurt himself. Some said something worse. After a few weeks, the search died down. Life went back to normal. People stopped talking about Daniel, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not because I knew him, I didn't, but because of something I'd seen. The night before he disappeared, I was walking home from a friend's house. It was late, maybe 10 or 11. I took a shortcut through the park, and that's when I saw him. Daniel. He was standing by the playground, just standing there, staring at the swings. I almost said something, almost asked if he was okay, but something stopped me. He looked Wrong. Not injured, not upset, just wrong. Like he was there, but he wasn't. Like he was a photograph of himself, not a real person. I walked past him, and he didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, just kept staring. I went home and forgot about it, until he disappeared, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. That look on his face, the way he stood so still. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? That I saw him standing in the park, that he looked weird. It didn't mean anything. But then I started seeing him again, not in real life, in my dreams. He'd be standing in the same spot, by the swings, staring, and I'd walk up to him and I'd say, "Daniel, where did you go?" And he'd turn to me, and his face would be blank, empty, and he'd say, "I'm still here." I'd wake up in a cold sweat. This went on for months. The same dream, the same words. I'm still here. I started avoiding the park, stopped taking that shortcut. But the dreams didn't stop. And then, one night, I saw him. Not in a dream. I was driving home from work. I had a part-time job at a grocery store, and I passed the park, and there he was, standing by the swings. I slammed on the brakes, pulled over, and got out of the car. "Daniel?" He didn't move. I walked closer, my heart pounding. "Daniel, is that you?" He turned, and it was him, older, thinner, but him. "Where have you been?" I asked. "Everyone's been looking for you." He stared at me. "I've been here." "Here? In the park?" "Yes." "For how long?" "I don't know." His voice was flat, emotionless. "You need to go home. Your parents—" "I can't." "What do you mean, you can't?" "I can't leave." I looked around. The park was empty, quiet. "Daniel, you're not making sense." He looked at me, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes. Fear. "I've been here," he said, "every day, every night. I can't leave. I've tried." "What are you talking about?" "I don't know, I'm here. I'm always here." I felt a chill run through me. "Come with me," I said. "I'll drive you home." He shook his head. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Just come with me." I reached out, grabbed his arm, and he vanished. 1 second he was there. The next, he was gone. I stood there alone, my hand still outstretched. I looked around, but there was no one, nothing. I got back in my car and drove home, shaking. The next day, I went back to the park, in the daylight, walked to the swings. There was nothing there, just an empty playground. But I swear, sometimes late at night, I still see him, standing by the swings, staring. I've never told anyone this before. Not my wife, not my therapist, not even my brother, and we used to tell each other everything. But I think about it almost every day. It's been 14 years, and I still can't explain what happened. I don't think I want to. It started the summer I turned 19. I was staying with my grandparents in rural Pennsylvania while I worked at a grocery store to save money for college. The house was old, built sometime in the 1800s, and it sat at the end of a long gravel driveway surrounded by woods. My grandparents were in their 80s then, and they kept to themselves. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet where you could hear the floorboards settling at night, where every creak had a rhythm you learned to recognize. I had the entire second floor to myself. My grandparents slept downstairs because my grandmother's knees were bad. The second floor had 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a narrow hallway that always smelled faintly of mothballs and old wood. I stayed in the room at the far end, the one that overlooked the backyard and the tree line. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. I worked my shifts, came home tired, ate dinner with my grandparents, and went upstairs to read or listen to music until I fell asleep. The house had its sounds, the way the pipes clanged when you turned on the hot water, the way the wind made the windows rattle. I got used to it. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. I remember lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. They moved from one end of the hallway to the other, then stopped outside my door. I held my breath. I don't know why, but I didn't move. I just listened. After a long moment, the footsteps continued. They walked back down the hallway, and then I heard the creak of the stairs. Someone was going downstairs. I thought it was my grandfather. Sometimes he had trouble sleeping, and I figured he'd come upstairs for something and was heading back down. I tried to go back to sleep, but something felt off. The footsteps had been too light, too careful. My grandfather was a big man, and when he walked, you knew it. These steps had been almost weightless. The next morning I asked him if he'd come upstairs during the night. He looked at me like I was crazy. "I can't make it up those stairs anymore," he said. "Not with my hip." I asked my grandmother, and she said the same thing. Neither of them had been upstairs in months. I told myself I'd dreamed it, that I'd been half asleep and imagined the whole thing. But that night, I lay awake, listening, and sure enough, around 2 in the morning, I heard them again. The footsteps. They started at the far end of the hallway, near the stairs. Slow, even steps. They walked the length of the hallway, paused outside my door, and then walked back. This time I got out of bed. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that it was nothing, that it was the house settling, or an animal in the walls, or something rational. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. The nightlight my grandmother kept plugged in near the bathroom cast a dim yellow glow, and I could see all the way to the other end. There was no one there, but I could still hear the footsteps. They were walking away from me, toward the stairs, and I could hear them as clearly as I could hear my own breathing. I stood there, frozen, watching the empty hallway. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and stopped. Then slowly they started coming back. I slammed the door and locked it. I got back into bed and pulled the covers over my head like a child. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. I researched old houses, settling foundations, thermal expansion. I convinced myself that it was some kind of acoustic illusion. But deep down, I knew what I'd heard, and I knew it wasn't normal. The footsteps came every night after that, always around 2 in the morning, always the same pattern. Down the hallway, pause outside my door, back down the hallway, down the stairs. I started sleeping with headphones in, but I could still hear them. Or maybe I just knew they were there. I thought about telling my grandparents, but what would I say? That their house was haunted? They'd lived there for 40 years. If something was wrong, they would have noticed. But then, one night, something changed. I woke up to the footsteps, as usual. But this time they didn't stop outside my door. This time, I heard the doorknob turn. I was lying on my side, facing the wall, and I heard it as clearly as anything. The slow creak of the old brass knob turning, and then the soft click of the latch releasing. The door opened. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just lay there, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I heard the footsteps enter the room. They walked slowly across the floor, and then they stopped right next to my bed. I could feel something standing there. I don't know how to explain it. The air felt heavier, colder. I could wail the presence of something next to me, just inches away, and I knew that if I turned over, I would see it. I didn't turn over. I don't know how long I lay there. It felt like hours. Eventually, the footsteps walked back across the room, and I heard the door close softly. I stayed frozen until the sun came up. The next morning, I told my grandparents I was going home. I made up an excuse about needing to help a friend move. They seemed disappointed, but they didn't push. I packed my things and left that afternoon. I never stayed in that house again. My grandparents passed away a few years later, and the house was sold to a developer who tore it down and built condos. I've never told anyone what happened. I don't know if I could, even if I wanted to. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I think about that presence standing next to me. And I think about the fact that I never turned over. I never saw what was there. And I'm not sure if I'm glad about that, or if I'll spend the rest of my life wondering. I used to work as a night custodian at a high school in the Midwest. It was a big building, 3 floors, built in the 1960s, the kind of place that felt too big when it was full of students, and way too big when it was empty. I worked from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, 5 days a week. Most of the time I was alone. I didn't mind it at first. The pay was decent, and I liked the solitude. I'd put on a podcast or some music and just work my way through the building. Classrooms, hallways, bathrooms, cafeteria. It was repetitive, but that was fine. I'd had worse jobs. The building was old, and it had its quirks. Doors that wouldn't stay closed, lights that flickered. The heating system made strange noises. I got used to it, but there was one part of the building I didn't like. The 3rd floor. It was mostly administrative offices and storage rooms. Nobody went up there much, even during the day. At night, it was completely deserted. The lights up there were older, and half of them didn't work, so it was always dim. The air felt different, too. Stale, like the windows hadn't been opened in years. I saved the 3rd floor for last every night. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to get it over with. I'd take the east stairwell up, prop open the door so it wouldn't lock behind me, and work my way through the hallway as quickly as possible. I never spent more than 30 minutes up there. But one night, something happened. I was mopping the main hallway when I heard a door close. It was loud, the kind of heavy slam that echoes. I stopped and looked around. All the classroom doors were open. I always made sure they were open before I started cleaning. I walked down the hallway, checking each room, and sure enough, one of the doors was closed. Room 307. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I'd missed it. Maybe the door had been closed the whole time. I opened it, propped it with a doorstop, and went back to mopping. But a few minutes later I heard it again. Slam. I turned around, and the door to 307 was closed again. I'm not the kind of person who believes in ghosts. I'm really not. But standing there in that dim hallway, looking at that closed door, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I walked over and opened the door again. This time, I looked inside. The room was empty. Just desks, a whiteboard, the usual stuff. Nothing out of place. I checked the windows to see if a draft could have closed the door, but they were all shut tight. I put the doorstop back and made sure it was wedged properly. I went back to mopping, but I kept glancing over my shoulder. The door stayed open for about 5 minutes. Then I heard it again. Slam. This time I didn't go back. I finished mopping as quickly as I could and got off the 3rd floor. My hands were shaking as I locked up the stairwell door. I told myself it was just the building. Old buildings do weird things. Doors don't hang right. Air pressure changes. It was nothing. But the next night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept putting off going up to the 3rd floor. When I finally made myself climb the stairs, I felt a knot of dread in my chest. I don't know why. It was just a door. I got to the 3rd floor, and all the doors were open, just like I'd left them, including 307. I started mopping, keeping my back to the hallway, trying not to think about it. But I could feel it, the anticipation, the waiting, and then it happened. Slam. I spun around, and the door was closed, but this time I heard something else. Footsteps inside the room. I stood there, frozen, listening. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth. I could hear them clearly through a door. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, gripping the mop handle, listening to someone walk around inside a room that I knew was empty. The footsteps stopped, and then I heard the doorknob rattle. I dropped the mop and ran. I didn't stop until I was back on the 1st floor, and even then I was shaking so hard I could barely lock the stairwell door. I spent the rest of the night in the cafeteria, sitting under the bright lights, too scared to go back upstairs. The next day, I talked to my supervisor. I told him there was something wrong with the 3rd floor. I didn't tell him everything, just that the doors were acting strange, and I thought there might be a draft issue. He said he'd check it out. A few days later, he told me he'd been up there, and everything seemed fine. He said the doors were hanging correctly, and there were no drafts. He looked at me like he thought I was making it up. I kept working, but I stopped going to the 3rd floor. I told my supervisor I'd finished it and didn't need to clean it anymore. He didn't question it. I don't think he cared. But here's the thing that still bothers me. About a week after I stopped going up there, I was working in the main office and I found an old yearbook. I was flipping through it, just killing time, and I saw a memorial page at the back. It was for a student who had died in the school. A girl. She had fallen down the east stairwell and broken her neck. It happened in 1998, almost 20 years before I started working there. The memorial page listed her favorite things, her favorite class. Room 307. I quit a few days later. I didn't give a reason. I just told them I was done. I think about that girl sometimes. I think about her walking around that empty classroom, closing the door over and over again, trying to get someone's attention. I don't know what she wanted, and I'm not sure I want to know. I've always been a heavy sleeper. My whole life, nothing wakes me up. Alarms, thunderstorms, people shouting, nothing. My wife used to joke that I could sleep through an earthquake. I was proud of it, honestly. It meant I always got a good night's sleep, no matter what. But that changed about 3 years ago. We just moved into a new apartment. It was a nice place, 2 bedrooms, good neighborhood. The rent was reasonable, which should have been a red flag, but we were excited. It was the first place we'd lived in that felt like ours. The first few nights were fine. We were exhausted from moving, so we slept like the dead. But then, maybe a week in, I started waking up in the middle of the night. It wasn't sudden. I didn't jolt awake or anything like that. I'd just open my eyes, completely alert, and feel this overwhelming sense that something was wrong. I'd look around the room and everything would be normal. My wife would be asleep next to me. The door would be closed, the window locked. But I couldn't shake the feeling. It happened every night, always around 3 in the morning. I'd wake up, lie there for a few minutes, and then fall back asleep. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was stress or maybe just adjusting to the new place. But then I started noticing things, little things, things that didn't make sense. One morning I woke up and found the bedroom door open. I asked my wife if she'd gotten up during the night, and she said no. She swore she'd closed the door before we went to bed, and I remembered her doing it. But there it was, wide open. A few nights later, I woke up at 3 and saw that the closet door was open. We always kept it closed because my wife didn't like looking at clutter before bed. But it was open, and I could see our clothes hanging there in the darkness. I got up, closed it, and went back to bed. The next morning, it was open again. I started paying closer attention. Every time I woke up, something was slightly different. The bedroom door, the closet, the window blinds, small things, but things that shouldn't have changed. I brought it up to my wife and she got defensive. She thought I was accusing her of gaslighting me or something. We had a whole argument about it, and I dropped it. But I couldn't stop noticing. Then one night, I woke up at 3, and I saw someone standing in the corner of the room. I didn't scream, I didn't move. I just stared. It was dark, and I couldn't make out any details. Just a shape, a silhouette. It was standing perfectly still, facing the bed. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, and when I opened my eyes again, it was gone. I told myself it was a shadow, a trick of the light. I'd been half asleep, and my brain had filled in the gaps. But my heart was pounding, and I couldn't fall back asleep. I lay there until the sun came up, staring at the corner where I'd seen it. The next night, I tried to stay awake. I wanted to see if it would happen again, but I couldn't fight it. Around 3, I felt my eyes getting heavy, and I drifted off. When I woke up a few minutes later, the bedroom door was open again. I started setting up tests, small things. I'd place a piece of paper under the door so I'd know if it opened. I'd put a coin on the windowsill to see if anyone touched the blinds. But every morning the tests were inconclusive. The paper would be moved, but I couldn't tell if it was from the door opening or just from the air conditioning. The coin would be in a slightly different spot, but maybe I'd just remembered wrong. My wife thought I was losing it. She said I was obsessing, that I needed to see a doctor. Maybe she was right, but I couldn't let it go. One night, I decided to set up my phone to record while we slept. I propped it up on the dresser, facing the bed, and hit record before I went to sleep. I didn't tell my wife. I knew she'd think I was being paranoid. The next morning, I checked the footage. Most of it was just darkness and the sound of us breathing. But then around 3 in the morning, I saw myself sit up in bed. I watched the video, and I watched myself sit up, swing my legs over the side of the bed, and stand up. I walked across the room, opened the closet door, and stood there for a moment, looking inside. Then I closed it, walked back to bed, and lay down. I had no memory of this, none. I watched the video 3 times, and I couldn't believe it. I'd been sleepwalking all those nights, all those little changes. It was me. I was the one opening the doors and moving things. I felt this huge sense of relief. It wasn't something supernatural. It wasn't someone breaking into our apartment. It was just me, sleepwalking for the first time in my life. But then I watched the video one more time, and I noticed something. Right before I stood up, right before I got out of bed, there was a sound. It was faint, but it was there. A whisper. I turned the volume all the way up and listened. It was a voice. A soft, calm voice coming from somewhere in the room. It said, "Wake up." And then I sat up, like I'd been obeying a command. I deleted the video. I didn't tell my wife. We moved out 2 months later, and I told her it was because I got a job in another city. She believed me. I don't sleepwalk anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I lie awake and wonder who was in that room with us. And I wonder if they followed us when we left. I'm a photographer, mostly freelance work, portraits and events. But sometimes I do fine art projects on the side. A few years ago, I got really into abandoned buildings. There's something about the decay, the way nature reclaims these spaces, that I found beautiful. I'd spend weekends driving around, looking for old factories, hospitals, houses, anything that had been left to rot. I was careful. I never broke anything to get in, and I always made sure the structures were safe before I went inside. I wasn't trying to get hurt or arrested. I just wanted to take pictures. One weekend, I drove out to this old farmhouse I'd heard about. It was a few hours outside the city, way out in the middle of nowhere. The house had been abandoned for decades, and from what I'd read online, it was supposed to be in pretty good shape. No graffiti, no vandalism, just an empty house slowly falling apart. I got there around noon. The house was at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by overgrown fields. It was a 2-story colonial, white paint peeling, windows broken. The front door was hanging off its hinges, so I didn't have to force my way in. The inside was what I expected. Dust, debris, old furniture covered in sheets. The wallpaper was peeling, and there were holes in the ceiling where the roof had leaked. It was perfect. I spent a few hours taking pictures. The light coming through the broken windows was beautiful, and I got some shots I was really happy with. I worked my way through the first floor, then headed upstairs. The second floor was in worse shape. The floorboards were soft in places, and I had to be careful where I stepped. There were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, all empty except for a few pieces of furniture. I took pictures of each room, trying to capture the atmosphere. The last room I went into was at the end of the hallway. It was smaller than the others, and the door was closed. When I opened it, I saw that it had been a child's room. There was a small bed in the corner, a dresser, and a rocking chair. The wallpaper was faded, but I could still make out the pattern. Little animals, bears and rabbits. I set up my camera and started taking pictures. The room had this strange stillness to it, like it had been frozen in time. I took a few shots of the bed, the dresser, the chair, and then I noticed something. On the dresser there was a small music box. It was old, the kind with a ballerina that spins when you open it. It was covered in dust, but it looked intact. I walked over and picked it up, brushing off the dust. I opened it, and to my surprise, it started playing. The ballerina spun slowly, and the music was faint but clear. I took a few pictures of it, then closed the lid and set it back on the dresser. I finished photographing the room and headed back downstairs. By then the sun was starting to set, and I wanted to get back to the city before it got dark. I packed up my gear and left. It wasn't until I got home and started going through the pictures that I noticed something strange. In one of the photos, the one of the rocking chair, there was something in the chair. A shape. It was blurry, like it had moved while I was taking the picture, but it was there. It looked like a person. I stared at the photo for a long time. I knew the chair had been empty when I took the picture. I'd been looking right at it. But there it was, clear as day. A shape sitting in the chair. I told myself it was a shadow, or a trick of the light, or something wrong with the camera. I tried to edit it out, but no matter what I did, the shape was still there. A few days later, I started having dreams about the house. I'd be back in that little bedroom, standing in front of the dresser, and the music box would be playing. I'd turn around, and there would be a child sitting in the rocking chair, watching me. I could never see their face, just a small figure, rocking back and forth. The dreams got worse. Every night the same thing, the room, the music box, the child, and then one night, the child stood up and walked toward me. I woke up before they reached me, but I could still hear the music box playing in my head. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to go back to the house. I don't know what I thought I'd find. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that there was nothing there, that it was all in my head. I drove out on a Saturday morning. The house looked the same, just as empty and decayed as before. I went inside and climbed the stairs to the second floor. My heart was pounding as I walked down the hallway to the little bedroom. The door was open. I stepped inside, and everything was exactly as I'd left it. The bed, the dresser, the chair. But the music box was gone. I looked everywhere. On the floor, under the bed, in the drawers. It wasn't there. I knew I'd put it back on the dresser. I remembered doing it. But it was gone. I left the house and never went back. I deleted all the photos from that day, including the one with the shape in the chair. I stopped doing urbex photography. I haven't been inside an abandoned building since. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it. Faint and far away, like it's coming from another room. The music box, playing that same slow, haunting melody. And I know that wherever that music box is now, the child is still sitting there, rocking back and forth, waiting for someone to come back. I drive for a ride-share company. I've been doing it for about 4 years now, mostly nights and weekends. It's not glamorous, but the money's decent, and I like the flexibility. You meet all kinds of people. Some are friendly, some are drunk, some just want to sit in silence. I've learned not to take anything personally. But there's one ride I can't forget. It was a Friday night, around 11. I'd been driving for a few hours and was thinking about calling it a night when I got a ping. The pickup was in a residential neighborhood on the edge of town. Not a great area, but not terrible either. I accepted the ride and headed over. When I pulled up to the address, I saw a woman standing on the sidewalk. She was probably in her 30s, wearing a jacket and jeans. She looked normal. Tired, maybe, but normal. She got in the back seat and said hello. I said hello back and confirmed the destination on the app. It was an address about 20 minutes away, in another part of town. We started driving, and for the first few minutes, everything was fine. She didn't say much, just looked out the window. I turned on some music, kept it low, and focused on the road. Then about 10 minutes into the ride, she spoke. Do you ever feel like someone's following you? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was still looking out the window. Like, in general? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. No, she said, right now. Do you feel like someone's following us? I looked at the road behind me. There were a few cars, but nothing unusual. No one was tailgating us or driving erratically. I don't think so, I said. Why? She didn't answer right away. She just kept staring out the window. Then she said, "There's a car, a black sedan. It's been behind us since we left." I checked the mirror again. There was a black sedan a few car lengths back, but it wasn't doing anything strange, just driving. "It's probably just going in the same direction," I said. She shook her head. "No, it's following us." I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to make her feel like I wasn't taking her seriously, but I also didn't want to feed into paranoia. I kept driving, keeping an eye on the sedan. It stayed behind us, matching our speed. We turned onto a main road, and the sedan turned with us. Then we turned onto a smaller street, and it turned again. By this point, I was starting to feel uneasy. Maybe she was right. Maybe someone was following us. "Should I call the police?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "Just keep driving. Don't stop." I kept driving. My hands were sweating, and my heart was beating faster. I checked the mirror every few seconds, and the sedan was still there. It wasn't getting closer, but it wasn't falling back either. We were about 5 minutes from the destination when she spoke again. "Turn left here." I glanced at the app. The route didn't call for a left turn. "That's not the way," I said. "Just turn left," she insisted. I hesitated, but I turned. The sedan turned with us. "Now right," she said. I turned right. The sedan followed. We were driving in circles now, away from her destination. I didn't understand what was happening, but I could feel the panic rising in my chest. "What's going on?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just kept staring at the sedan in the side mirror. "Please," I said, "tell me what's happening." She finally looked at me. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide. "I don't know who that is," she said, "but they've been following me for 3 days." I felt a chill run down my spine. I wanted to pull over, to end the ride, to get her out of my car, but I didn't. I just kept driving. "We need to go to the police," I said. She shook her head. "They won't believe me. I already tried." We turned onto another street, and the sedan was still there. Always the same distance behind us. Never closer, never farther. I made a decision. I pulled into a gas station, a busy one with bright lights and lots of people. I figured if someone was following us, they wouldn't try anything in a public place. I stopped the car and turned to her. "We're going inside, and we're calling the police, okay?" She nodded, but she looked terrified. We got out of the car, and I looked at the sedan. It had pulled into the gas station behind us and parked a few spaces away. The windows were tinted, and I couldn't see inside. We went into the gas station, and I asked the clerk to call the police. He looked annoyed but picked up the phone. I kept watching the sedan through the window. It didn't move. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. I explained the situation, and they went outside to check on the sedan. I watched from inside as one of the officers approached the car and knocked on the window. Nothing happened. The officer knocked again, then tried the door. It was unlocked. He opened it and looked inside. The car was empty. I felt my stomach drop. The officer searched the car, then came back inside and asked us a few questions. I told him everything that had happened. The woman told him about being followed for 3 days. He took notes, but I could tell he didn't believe her. He probably thought she was paranoid or on drugs. Eventually, the officers left. The woman thanked me and said she'd walk the rest of the way. I tried to convince her to let me drive her, but she refused. She just walked out of the gas station and disappeared into the night. I drove home in a daze. I couldn't stop thinking about the sedan, the way it had followed us, turn for turn, the way it had been empty when the police checked. I never saw that woman again. I checked the app to see if she'd left a review, but there was nothing. It was like the ride had never happened, but I know it did. And sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I check the rearview mirror a little more often than I used to, just to make sure no one's following me. I'm a hospice nurse. I've been doing it for about 12 years now. It's hard work, emotionally and physically, but it's important. I've sat with a lot of people in their final days, and I've seen a lot of things that most people never see. You learn to be comfortable with death. You learn to accept it. But there's one patient I'll never forget. Her name was Margaret, and she was 87 years old. She had late-stage cancer, and the doctors had given her a few weeks at most. She'd chosen to die at home, and my agency assigned me to her case. I'd visit her every day, make sure she was comfortable, administer her medication, and just sit with her. She lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. Her husband had passed years ago, and she didn't have any children. A neighbor checked in on her occasionally, but for the most part, she was by herself. She was a sweet woman, very quiet, very polite. She didn't talk much about her life, but she seemed at peace with what was happening. The first few visits were routine. I'd check her vitals, make sure she was eating, and adjust her pain medication as needed. She was weak, but she was still lucid. We'd talk about small things, the weather, the birds outside her window. She seemed content. But then, one day she said something strange. I was sitting with her reading a magazine when she suddenly looked at me and said, "He's here." I looked up. "Who's here?" She pointed to the corner of the room. "Him? He's been waiting." I looked at the corner. There was nothing there, just an empty chair and a small table. "There's no one there, Margaret," I said gently. She frowned. "You can't see him?" "No," I said. "There's no one there." She looked at me for a long moment, then looked back at the corner. "He says it's almost time." I didn't know what to say. I'd heard about end-of-life hallucinations. They're common in hospice patients, especially when they're on strong pain medication. The brain starts to misfire, and people see things that aren't there. Usually it's family members or loved ones who've passed. It's the brain's way of preparing for death. I assumed that's what was happening with Margaret. I made a note in her chart and didn't think much of it. But the next day she mentioned him again. "He's still here," she said. "He's sitting in the chair." I looked at the chair, still empty. "What does he look like?" I asked, trying to play along. She thought for a moment. "Tall, thin. He doesn't say much. He just watches." "Does he scare you?" She shook her head. "No, he's patient." I asked her if she wanted me to move the chair, thinking that maybe if it wasn't in her line of sight, she'd stop fixating on it. But she refused. She said she didn't mind him being there. Over the next few days, Margaret got weaker. She stopped eating, and she slept most of the time. But whenever she was awake, she'd look at the corner and nod, like she was acknowledging someone. One night, I stayed late because Margaret's breathing had become irregular. I knew she didn't have much time left. I sat by her bed holding her hand, and I watched her chest rise and fall. Around midnight, she opened her eyes and looked at me. "He says you'll see him too," she whispered. "What?" I asked. "When it's your turn," she said. "He'll be there, waiting." A chill ran through me. I didn't know what to say. I just squeezed her hand and told her everything was okay. She closed her eyes, and a few minutes later she stopped breathing. I sat with her for a while, just to make sure. Then I called the coroner and started filling out the paperwork. It was late, and I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home. But as I was gathering my things, I glanced at the corner of the room, and I saw him, just for a second. A tall, thin figure standing in the shadows. I blinked, and he was gone. I told myself it was exhaustion, that my brain was playing tricks on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret had been right, that something had been in that room with her, waiting. I've thought about her a lot since then, about what she said, about him, and sometimes late at night, I wonder if he's waiting for me too. That's all for tonight. I hope these stories gave you something to think about, or maybe they'll keep you awake a little longer than you planned. Before you fall asleep, I want you to think about something. All of these stories, these moments when things went wrong, when the familiar became strange, they all started the same way, with someone noticing something small, something that didn't quite fit, the footsteps that were too light, the door that wouldn't stay closed, the voice that shouldn't have been there. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's all just coincidence. But maybe it's not. Maybe the world is full of small, wrong things. Things we choose to ignore because it's easier that way. Because acknowledging them means admitting that we don't understand everything, that we're not as safe as we think we are. So tonight, as you lie in bed, listen. Pay attention to the sounds around you, the way the house settles, the way the air moves. And if something feels wrong, even just a little bit, don't ignore it, because it might be trying to tell you something. Sleep well.